Hello everyone, welcome to a very different video here. Today I have got something I've been trying to do for a long time with this modding stuff. I do not have a solution for, and it is kind of the final frontier, short of replacing models and stuff like that. Now obviously the model stuff is a whole other can of worms. I don't anticipate being able to do that in any reasonable time, so I don't think that's something worth wasting time on necessarily. However, this is something huge. So the main purpose of this video is to announce a bounty. I'm putting a bounty on discovering what I'm about to explain. I'm putting a bounty on trying to figure this out because I don't know how to figure it out. I don't know that anyone in the Nascar Thunder modding community would be able to figure out. I'm not saying don't try. I'm saying you guys are more than welcome to. But I am saying that putting a bounty on it is what I think is necessary to get enough eyes on this that maybe people outside of the NASCAR community, outside of the NASCAR modding community, and into the PS2 modding community and anything like that, getting it in front of their eyes. This is the only way that I think that'll happen. I've reached out to people in the community. There's been plenty of people that were helpful and kind of pointed me to other communities and other forums and other places. I've offered to pay money to get it solved if somebody felt confident about figuring it out. I do think someone who's used to doing the steps I'm about to show and someone who understands the PS2 emulation a little better and the memory reading of the system and all that stuff a little better. I think that someone who has that sort of knowledge and who's done this for other games or something similar for other games will be able to figure this out fairly quickly. But I know that at this point I've not found anybody who's willing to do so, who can do so. The one thing, I've mentioned it in other videos, the one thing that's missing from our current modding stuff is the ability to really truly control the ratings and the driver speeds of the computer cars to an extensive extent, in career mode especially. And what I mean by that is in race now and in season mode, we're able to set the driver ratings within the limited range of their stats that the base game has as the limited range. Which is 0 to essentially 255, but it's actually half of that for a lot of their stats. However, and noticed in career mode, the ratings don't seem to apply as perfectly as we would like. We notice it with the 90s mod especially, where Davey Allison's car was not performing as good, was not performing as good as it should have. And another driver, Jimmy Horton, I believe, was performing way better than he should be. The rest were believable for the most part, other than my dad and Tim Richmond being in fantasy driver slots. They were not racing the way they should. But if you did a Race Now event, they performed exactly as they should, with their driver ratings being as you would expect and how they perform to be based off of that. Everything made sense. But in career mode, there's some other calculation happening that we don't really have control over that seems to be kind of just the base driver stats in the core vanilla game. So what we found out was that Davey Allison had landed on Greg Biffle's slot, and Greg Biffle was a rookie, and they had his ratings way lower than they should have been. Let me rephrase that. His ratings were okay, but there's some extra thing going on in career mode only that he would run slower than he should. And Dale Jarrett had the opposite, and that's where Jimmy Horton's car landed. Jarrett's stats were low, but his performance was always really good. He'd always race really well. It was that kind of thing that we happened to notice during the 90 season and led us to the problem we're trying to solve now. So somewhere in the game, when you load into a race, it takes the driver's stats and calculates them to a final location somewhere in memory. I don't know where that is. if we can find out where the driver's ratings end up, where their final location is in memory, how they're formatted, and what driver each value equates to, then I can update the tool to give us even more control to just a complete new degree of not only the driver rating specifically, but the actual speed of every single AI car of the whole field, really, from one race to another. We can make them at super speedways have exactly the same ratings, for example, and make one giant pack out of it. We could make the AI even faster than they can possibly go in career mode, to where running a 100 rated car, you could still make it more difficult than that, to where you'd still have to run custom setups to beat them. Or you could make it impossibly difficult, make them crazy fast, where even with a custom setup you won't beat them. There's those options in front of us if we can find this stat. That said, I'm going to explain what the issue is, and then I'm going to explain how one of the many ways I've gone about trying to resolve it, and then I'm going to explain where I'm coming up short, and what the criteria is for to get the bounty. And the bounty today is starting at $200. I'm giving $200 US to whoever can figure this out via PayPal or some sort of form that I can send it. But whoever can figure this out and give me the proper solution, not just pointing me in the right direction. Maybe I'll do a small reward if you get me close. If you get like where the stats live, but you can't tell which driver it is, I could maybe work with that. That gets me a lot further than I am. But pretty much, if you want the $200 bounty, then you have to be able to identify which drivers the stats belong to and where the stats are for that particular race, not just the stats that I already know about. I'm going to show you this giant ugly table here that I have in Excel. So this file's with the mod master tools and all that stuff, and all the modding stuff I've released. But I want to point this out I'm going to upload this file separately and have a link in the description for those that aren't familiar with the NASCAR stuff. These are the memory addresses of all sorts of different values, and some of them you guys aren't going to need to worry about. But where you might want to start your tracking, so the drivers have speed, aggression, defense, control, and durability as their main stats. They also have these two stats this is pit crew quality. I forget what this one is, but I don't know what they're used for. In addition to that, they have a short track, speedway, super speedway, and road course stat as well. These, I have only noticed them to affect qualifying, but I actually do think they affect the race as well. I'm just not sure. I've only really noticed the results in qualifying for the career mode in the game. I think in Race Now they work to affect the stats for the individual races as well, but it's tough to tell. But anyway, these are what you'll want to track. Now, I have a cheats file that has just 3 active drivers to try to make this a little easier to track down. And what that means is when you're in the game and you go to the car select, there's only going to be 3 drivers. And when you pick one and you go to the race, there's only going to be 3 drivers in the race. The reason I did this is so that you can pick one and put breakpoints for the other 2 in memory and be able to stop the emulator when it's accessing that data. This is part of the steps that I've used to try to solve this. Now, I'm going to be doing all my stuff in Race Now mode, but I do want you to find this data. It should be in the same place for Race Now and Career Mode as well, but Career Mode is where we're struggling to get this to work. So that's where it ultimately needs to end up, but I think tracking it in Race Now gives you more consistent conditions for what the stats are going to be. But you could also use the save state and get consistent things with save states if you want. So I have put a breakpoint. There's two, I want to mention, there's two pieces of software I use for those that have not done this before. There's a free one called Art Money, and then there's, I mean, this is also free, but there's Cheat Engine, which I gotta link up to the game. But I usually use Art Money to try to see where exactly in memory the game is. I search for some driver name and search, a custom range that's a bit wide, and that kind of narrows me down. So that helps me out with setting up Cheat Engine to be in the right range of memory and nothing extra. There is another way. I know you can set this to this, but I've not gotten results out of that sometimes, so I'm not quite sure. Like, you could even see right here, this is 7FF7B. So 7FF7, it's never going to hit a B here. So this is wrong inherently. So I'm setting my range based on this rather than based on that there. Also, for those that have used my mod tool and modding stuff before, I recommend actually not using the special build of PCSX2 to do this with, because the debugger that they include has gotten some upgrades to its interface and functionality since that version. So this downloading the newest version of PCSX2 is best for trying to track this down. It obviously won't work with all the mod stuff, but it's best for working on this. Also, to enable the debugger, you have to go to Tools and Show Advanced Settings, and then you should be able to see the debugger and the debug menu as well. So in the debugger, I'm going to add 2 breakpoints here. So we're going to hit New. And I'm just showing my process. Again, this isn't the solution. This is just how far I've gotten. So the drivers I have active are these 3 right here. So I'm going to set the first 2. I'm going to get the first 2's speed stat. And I'm going to put read. So when it reads from that memory is what we're basing off of. And the reason I put 2, so here's my thinking. And, again, this hasn't got me the full extent. Well, actually, I'll just show it as we go. It'll make more sense, I think, that way. So I'm going to select the one driver that I've not... Oh, it is actually hitting those breakpoints. Hang on. I'm going to select the driver that I've not put breakpoints for, because his stats aren't going to calculate because you're playing as him, so I don't expect his stats to be used. But I'm going to enable the breakpoints for the other ones. I'm going to do a save state here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load into a track, wait for it to hit the first breakpoint, and it'll stop here, and this will have a run button up top. And at that point, I'm going to run Cheat Engine to an unknown initial value. So I don't know what values these are in memory right now because I don't know what I'm looking for. I am going to change the type to all, though I know that all isn't really the recommended one here, but we don't know the exact format that we're looking for. I think it's going to be a float or a double. I think a float, but I don't know for sure. So I'm going to hit all. And we have my custom range here, and this might not be perfect for you guys. It's not even perfect for this emulator. I just have it close enough, and we're going to go unknown initial value. You have to reselect it after you change the value type. So I'm going to do my first scan now, and that's going to bring up all the values. Well, it's not going to bring them up, but all the values in memory that it found, which are just literally everything in this range. But at this point, what I'm going to do, so I want to see which breakpoint it actually accessed here. So I'm going to go to the registers. It's using T1. Oh, that's the value. in A0. Well, I mean, one of these should be close to what I'm looking for. So 17, is it 7B or 7A? I actually don't see it in either of those. 1F7. 1F7A. So it's using this one. So I'm going to disable this breakpoint and hit run. And it's only going to go for like a split second. And now it hit the breakpoint for the other driver. And it should be, yeah, you can see it's B this time, 17B. So it's in that A0, it's in that memory range right now. It's trying to access it. So, and you could go to this in memory and see its hex values and all that stuff if you wanted to, but that's not what we're looking for. So at this point, I don't usually need the Art Money interface after I've gotten the initial range. I usually don't use it after that. I used to use it all the time, but I think Cheat Engine is better for trying to find this sort of thing, though I haven't found it yet, so maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not using it right, who knows. So we're going to change to, where's the, oh no, this is what we want. Okay. So we're going to switch to a changed value and do a next scan. So we have our initial scan with all these, where we don't know what the value is supposed to be. And then we want anything that's changed since we first accessed driver 1 and now we're accessing driver 2. So that should be the overall range of when they used that, calculate that driver's race stats. So I'll hit next scan, and you'll see that brings up 36,000 results. Now part of that's because I have the value type as all, so we have repeat entries here that are 2 different value types. So, a lot of these are repeats of themselves. But what we want to do then is, this is changing. So the game's not running, it's currently not live. So in my mind, one of these 36,000 values is the exact value we need to manipulate to find the driver stats, to be able to control the driver stats beyond what we have currently. So I'm going to uncheck the breakpoint and run until it loads up the race. We can speed this up a little bit. And at this point, we'll just pause it on that start. Actually, I'll leave it run on that press start menu. So I'm going to switch this to unchanged value and hit next scan. So it's going to look for anything that hasn't changed since we stopped it and checked initially. And sometimes you end up repeating this because some values will continue to change. Actually, we can go into the track. That'll help get rid of a few of these. So anything that hasn't changed is out. So now there's only 151 values. And again, there are some repeats where it's the same value, but just 4 bytes, a string, maybe a double. So the different value types. Actually, I don't think that's string. I forget what that is. And we can see where these are in memory and take a look at them to see if they make any sense, logically speaking. This is where I usually do use Art Money, though, is for this stuff. I like the visual a little bit better than the other ones. So I can look at this and say a 4-byte float, which is what normally we're looking for. So just out of habit of messing around with these, I can recognize right away this is actually a pointer. So it's 1FDC528. That's a memory address somewhere else. So this one is not the value we need. It could potentially be pointing to the value we need, so I'm going to go ahead and add one for that as well. So 1FDC528. They read right to left as far as the individual cells, but it's still left to right within it, so it's 01FDC528 is the memory address. And that actually leads me to another pointer, which is the same thing but 1 0 on the end. It's only slightly different spot in memory. So this probably is a table, a temporary table with all these values in it. And these values, I believe, are, so within this table, this value, within this table, this value, within this table, this value. And these could be driver ratings, potentially, but they seem to be pointers to other memory for the most part. But these could be driver ratings somewhere in here. It doesn't appear that way though, because we have the game limited to 3 drivers, so there really shouldn't be this much data if that's all it is. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's probably not any of these. Now these, I believe, are actually, I think they're out of range of the game memory, so I don't believe it's any of these either. I don't think that's a valid one here. Well, it's something in memory, but it's a big old mess. This usually means like textures. Not always, but this looks like just random gobbledygook to me. So again, I kind of hit a wall. I don't think it's one of these values necessarily. And here's the other thing is, for all I know, when the game initially loads the track and initially grabs driver values, it might put it somewhere else in memory, and then later in the loading process calculate out the final driver stats. Because again, it might save it as a pointer like these, this memory address, and that might be pointing back to the stats somewhere. And that's all it did, was copy, the location for the stats. So I don't know. Again, this doesn't point me to where the actual final number is that I can manipulate to change up what the driver stats are. So I'm going to actually reload my save state before I selected, and we're going to hit new scan. I'm going to change my range a little bit because I feel like that was too wide of a range anyway. So I'm going to go B. I guess B2 is plenty of memory there. Again, I'm going to go unknown initial value, and we're going to go into debug, and what I'm going to do is enable these for now. I'm going to disable them quick after it's stopped. Run, pause. Okay, so that's the first time it accessed them, but I think it accesses them again later. So right here it did. Now, which one it's accessing, it looks like it's still the A1 first. So I'm going to go ahead and do my scan. We're going to uncheck the A1. We're going to run it. And then we're going to go to changed value and hit next scan. So that only brought up 75 values. Some of these actually look like... Okay, so that to me is a good sign, because these look like regular like ratings. I don't remember what his ratings are offhand, but that seems like a good sign to me. Now, I have noticed that one of the temporary locations in memory is 05 blah blah blah. Like, that's often used to store stuff temporarily. That's actually interesting. So let's go there. 1F47168. Again, the rest of this video, I'm just showing you kind of my process of going through these. I believe 110 is, if I remember right offhand, the rating for Jack Sprague, so, or one of his ratings. But this table's interface group file IO process. that could just be leftover string stuff that sometimes happens, but this could also be potentially the info we're looking for. So this is again a pointer right here, this one F4 73 F8. You can even go there, which that only pointed down the table a little bit, I think. Yeah, this is down the same, that's down the same table, just a couple of rows. And then that's pointing somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So it can be a big web. It can be a bit complex to find. But essentially, the result I want, you know what, I can just show you, let me load, and I'm going to show you kind of what I'm looking for. So if I go to this address, this value here, actually, let me put it in Art Money. It'll be easier to show you. That's not. Okay. So if I click on this right here, oops, sorry, wrong row. You'll see this has a value of 60 when you have it as float 4 bytes, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4 bytes, and this is a float value, so it means it can be a decimal. I could change this to 61.25, and oh, actually I have to, or did that actually, oh no, that did set it. So you could set it to a specific value, and you see it'll change that. So what I want to show you is if you set this, so if I do a save state right now with it at 60, and then let me just add this to the table so it's easier to change and easier to see. So if I set this to 2500 and I load into a race, that driver should be absolutely flying throughout the race because I just upped his speed stat. So it might not be super apparent right away because I know this has a bit of a cap to it, but usually what I do is I just park and speed up the emulator and give it a couple laps. So you can see now that he's out front, he's pulling away kind of quick. It's not a ridiculous amount. There is definitely a cap on this value, but if you go to race stats, and you look at his lap time, he's doing 31.0s here. Now if I reload and I go into that track and I don't change his stat, so now not only is he not taking the lead, but he's losing ground to the other car. So you can see that his speed is a lot slower at his base stat of 60. So that stat does affect his speed as expected. Not, you know, obviously, like I said, there's a cap to it. The cap pretty much is, we get it set to 60. I think the cap's like 128 is the highest that it actually does anything. But you can tell he was doing 30, you know, what was it, a 30.7, now he's doing 31.6s. And Nadu did a 31.1, now he's doing a 31.2. It's about the same. You know, whereas Sprague's changed an entire second. So it does affect their stats. However, if I did this in career mode, so if I do this in career mode, right now his stats at 60, we're going to load into, I'm going to save state, we're going to load into this race. So if I let this play out, it's going to be kind of a normal race at this track for these guys. And they'll run their normal lap times here, so 24.2s across the board. So now if I load my save state and I change the stat to that ridiculous number again, so we've got kind of a new side effect here that I'm not even sure of. So when I make Sprague's speed stat better, it also made Nadu faster, by a few tenths. They both are in the high 23s, but it also made Hermie Sadler slower. So, I mean, you can see changing the stats affects things in career mode, but it's not what you'd expect. Whereas in Race Now, when you change one person's stat, that one driver will be different and nobody else. So there's some other weird calculations going on that in career mode that do not happen in Race Now. That whenever they have the final driver speeds and whatever stats, you know, change their pace on track, happens here. So another instance of this I can show you if we go to my mod tool that I have. So if I change my car's stats, so let's just go ahead and let's give this ridiculous power. And I go ahead and select, oh, I have to hit updating game. And then if I select that motor with ridiculous power, that ups my car rating. And now if I go into the race, and this is without changing any of the driver stats, you'll pretty quickly notice, you see the lap times they're turning? They're really fast now. They're seconds faster than they were. So the AI's speed calculation can be put to values way more extreme. You saw I changed Sprague's rating from 60 to 2500, and that only made a slight difference to his lap times at Atlanta and now at Rockingham. It only made a few tenths of a second difference. I think it was a full second at Atlanta. But I changed my car rating in career mode to this other value, and you can see that the AI's speed is also based on your car's rating. So there's an extreme where when you up the AI's car rate or your own car rating, it affects the AI's overall speed. Not necessarily their skill between each other, not necessarily their stats versus each other, but their total speed of every AI car goes berserk with your rating. So that tells me somewhere in the career mode code, when it loads into a track, into a race, there's extra code going on to change those final values. And so that means somewhere in memory right now is this new driver rating, and that's what I want to find. If I can find wherever this lives, this final value that I could then manipulate to make the AI however fast or slow I want them to be specifically, then we're exactly where we want to be. So that's what the bounty is. If you can find me where that final value lives, that's based off of the driver's skill stats, the career car rating, they all converge to one value somewhere in memory, most likely, or maybe two values in memory, but probably just converge down to one value in memory per car of how fast or slow they are. If we can find that, if someone can find that, that's what the bounty payout's for. If you can find what value I can manipulate after you've loaded into the track to change individual driver speed, so I can make one driver this fast and one driver as slow as we just had them doing 24 seconds around here. If you can find where I can do that, then the bounty's yours. $200. It might go up to, if anyone in the community wants to contribute to the bounty and make it a bigger amount, please do so. I'll keep it updated in the description what the bounty total is, but it is starting at $200. That's what I'm putting down to try to get this found. If this gets figured out, then I am super happy and consider all the modding stuff like a full success. Once this is found, I will update my tool, and we will have control of not just every individual driver's pace versus each other to the extent that we want, but even further yet, we'll have AI that can go as fast as you need them to keep this game difficult, even for the most experienced player, even for the most advanced car setups. We can make the AI still difficult. That was the big thing that was wrong with this game, is that when you got to a certain point in career mode, when you got your car past like a 70 rating, even with default setups, you'd dominate 90% of the races, if not all of them. So it lost its fun and the longevity in that career mode. But if we can make it to where you have to have a 100 perfect car to be in that top 5 mix, and to where we can adjust the stats from one race to another, one track to another. Maybe you're really good at one track and you want it to be harder. Maybe you're really bad at one track and you want it to be easier. Whatever the case may be, we can have that control if we can figure out where this data lives. So bounty is up. The ball's in your court, guys. I have tried and tried and tried to figure out where this is, and I cannot find the values I need to be able to manipulate to control the speeds. So have at it. Have some fun with it. Again, the 2 tools I use is Art Money, which is free, and Cheat Engine, which is also free. Be careful with Cheat Engine, though. Don't leave this running when you're not working on this. When you're only doing the modding stuff, that's when you want to mess with it. And on top of that, make sure you use the most recent version of the PS2 emulator, because the debugger has more options. Even just being able to resize this wasn't an option before. It used to just be like crammed to this size and that was it. But you know, even small stuff like that are some of the changes that came with this. But I look forward to somebody figuring this out, because it's in my book, besides being able to customize car models or 3D models in the game, this is the holy grail for now. And then that's the holy grail that I don't expect to ever achieve, and I'm not super sweating if we don't get there. This would be enough to make me completely happy with the modding scene. But thanks everyone for checking this out. You know, if you find this too intimidating, don't sweat it. This is not for everybody. I'm not expecting everybody to jump on this. I'm just hoping that some people who know their stuff a little bit with trying to track data down like that can figure it out. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.